in Italy, down in Puglia, and Lisa has brought some of the pasta that she's made out of the durum wheat that we grew at Diddley Squat, and she's asked the chef in the kitchen to cook it for her.
There's a specific kind of vindication that only lands properly when it happens in exactly the place where you'd expect to be humiliated instead. Lisa Hogan walked into a restaurant kitchen in Puglia, in the heel of southern Italy, a region that's been growing durum wheat and turning it into pasta for longer than most European nations have existed in their current form, and handed the chef a bag of pasta made from wheat, grown roughly 1,000 miles away, in a field in the Cotswolds that most Italian pasta makers would probably have written off as unsuitable for the job before a single seed even went into the ground. That's not a small gesture. That's walking into the home of the world's most demanding pasta culture, a place where the difference between properly made pasta and a mediocre imitation is discussed with the same seriousness other countries reserve for wine or coffee, and asking them to judge your homework on camera in front of an audience of millions, with absolutely no guarantee the answer would be flattering. To understand why that moment carries the weight it does, you have to go back to what actually happened to that durum wheat crop in the first place, because this isn't a simple, uncomplicated success story arriving out of nowhere. It's a genuine comeback, and comebacks only mean something once you understand exactly how bad the original failure actually was, and how long it took to turn around.
Well, is that a slug?
Oh, shit.
No.
That's not good.
You've got ergot in your wheat. That is a hallucinogenic fungus.
Durum wheat has been a recurring character in the Diddley Squat story since the show's earlier seasons, and it has not, until now, been a kind one. Back in season 3, Clarkson and the team harvested their durum wheat crop with real hope attached to it, specifically because durum has only one commercially sensible use, which meant everyone involved knew from the outset exactly what was riding on the quality tests once the harvest was actually complete. The result, when it came back from testing, landed like a punch, unusable for making pasta. Not disappointing. Not slightly below spec in some way that could be quietly worked around or blended with a better batch. Unusable. Full stop. The exact outcome you don't want to hear about a crop specifically grown for one narrow purpose and one purpose only, with essentially no fallback use if that single purpose falls through. That wasn't an isolated stumble either, a single bad season that could be written off as unfortunate but unrepresentative. The wider pattern across multiple seasons of Diddley Squat's arable farming has been genuinely brutal, and nobody involved in the show has tried particularly hard to dress it up as anything other than exactly what it was. Clarkson's own account of one especially difficult year, later turned into the 4th Diddley Squat book, opens with a sequence of failures laid out with almost gleeful bluntness, the kind of self-deprecating honesty that's become one of his defining traits as a writer and presenter. The spring barley crop failed, just like the oilseed rape and the durum wheat. Then the oats turned the color of a hearing aid and the mushrooms went moldy. That's not a farmer downplaying a rough patch for comic effect or exaggerating for a punchline. That's a near total collapse across nearly every single crop the farm had put in the ground that particular year, durum wheat included, sitting right there in the same sentence as failed barley and moldy mushrooms, presented with the flat, matter-of-fact delivery of someone who stopped being surprised by bad news. Weather was the recurring villain throughout these seasons, and durum wheat in particular is a genuinely unforgiving crop to grow successfully in the English climate, arguably one of the least suited crops in the entire Diddley Squat rotation to the specific conditions Oxfordshire actually provides. It's a Mediterranean grain by nature, and by centuries of careful, selective breeding, evolved over countless generations, specifically to thrive under the kind of dry, consistent heat that Puglia and Sicily and North Africa provide in genuine abundance, and that Oxfordshire, by stark contrast, essentially never manages to deliver with any real consistency. Durum wants long, hot, dry summers to develop the high protein content and hard, glassy kernel structure that makes proper pasta possible in the first place, the specific physical characteristics that separate genuine durum flour from ordinary bread wheat, entirely unsuited to pasta making. English weather, meanwhile, wants to give you rain in precisely the weeks a durum crop most needs uninterrupted sun. Season 3's planting was already delayed by torrential March rainfall before the seed had even properly gone into the ground, with Caleb openly, audibly hoping on camera that the late start wouldn't hurt yields too badly. It did, in the end, hurt them considerably.
This has been planted?
This has been planted.
Well, where's the rape gone?
Well, it's failed. It's gone. We might find the odd plant in the middle, but I'll show you what's happened.
The whole field's failed?
Yeah, just the little black beetle.
So for several consecutive years, durum wheat sat on the list of things Diddley Squat had tried and essentially failed at, alongside mustard yields too small to bother with and mushroom operations that went moldy before they ever reached a customer. It became, in the show's own recurring internal mythology, a symbol of the gap between Clarksons' ambitions for the farm and the actual, stubborn agricultural reality of trying to grow a Mediterranean staple crop in a country famous for its rain. Then, more recently, something genuinely shifted. The crop actually came good, breaking a losing streak that had stretched across multiple consecutive seasons. Whether through a genuinely better growing season with more favorable weather patterns finally aligning, refined technique picked up gradually across years of trial, error, and hard-won agricultural lessons, or simply the kind of overdue luck that eventually has to arrive after enough consecutive bad ones. Diddley Squat's durum wheat finally produced grain of a quality genuinely worth doing something meaningful with. And Lisa, who by this point had built an entire secondary identity around the farm's food and retail side, running the farm shop, developing her lion's mane mushroom supplements, selling candles with names cheeky enough to make her a minor internet celebrity in their own right, decided the appropriate response to finally succeeding with this specific, historically troublesome crop wasn't simply to sell it quietly as raw grain, or turn it into another jar sitting on an already crowded shop shelf. She turned it into pasta, and then, rather than celebrating quietly at home with a bowl of it, she took that pasta all the way to Italy. The trip itself, documented through Instagram in early August, has the exact chaotic, self-aware energy that's defined how the Diddley Squat team communicates with its audience for years now. Ever since the show first made them into recognizable public figures, Jeremy appears in an Instagram story sitting in a restaurant in Puglia, visibly amused by what's about to happen, narrating the entire situation directly to camera with the specific brand of gleeful anticipation reserved for watching someone else take a genuine, public risk. "Okay, I'm in Italy, down in Puglia," he says, "and Lisa has brought some of the pasta that she's made out of the durum wheat that we grew at Diddley Squat, and she's asked the chef in the kitchen to cook it for her. In Italy, this is going to be good," before chuckling to himself in a way that makes unmistakably clear he genuinely isn't certain whether good means good for Lisa's reputation, or good in the sense of entertainingly, watchably disastrous for anyone filming it. That uncertainty is exactly the point, and exactly why the whole stunt works as well as it does on camera. Puglia isn't a random Italian location chosen purely for scenic backdrop value or tourist appeal. It's one of the most serious pasta-producing regions in the entire country, a place where durum, wheat cultivation, and pasta-making technique have been refined and passed down across countless generations, where local chefs and home cooks alike would know instantly, on taste and texture alone, whether a batch of pasta had been made from genuinely good durum flour or from something that fell noticeably short of the accepted regional standard. Asking a chef to cook and implicitly judge English-grown durum wheat pasta is about as high-stakes a culinary test as Lisa could plausibly have arranged for herself, short of formally entering a blind tasting competition against generations-old family pasta producers with centuries of accumulated expertise behind them. It's worth sitting with why this particular gesture landed the way it did with the show's audience, beyond simply being a funny travel clip that generated a few laughs on Instagram. For years, Diddley Squat's failures have been the emotional currency the entire show trades in, the honest, unglamorous backbone underneath all the comedy and chaos. Viewers don't tune in primarily to watch competence or effortless success. They tune in specifically to watch genuine struggle against genuinely difficult odds, softened by humor and carried forward by the specific, real affection that's developed between Clarkson, Lisa, Caleb, and Gerald across multiple seasons of shared, sometimes genuinely painful hardship. A failed durum wheat crop wasn't just a disappointing line item buried in a farm balance sheet somewhere. It was one thread in a much larger, ongoing story about whether this particular attempt at proper working agriculture could ever actually succeed on its own genuine terms, rather than simply being propped up indefinitely by television revenue, exactly as Clarkson himself has openly and repeatedly acknowledged the farm frequently needs to be.
In Italy, this is going to be good.
Not nice, the pasta. Very good. Very good pasta.
So when that crop finally came good, after years of repeated failure documented openly across the show and in Clarkson's own written accounts, and Lisa's response was to take it directly to the geographic and cultural home of pasta making itself, rather than quietly celebrating a good yield back in Oxfordshire with considerably less fanfare. It read as something more than a marketing stunt, even though it was, undeniably, also exactly that at the same time. It read as an answer to years of accumulated failure, delivered in the single most pointed possible location available anywhere in the world. You don't take mediocre pasta to Puglia expecting a gentle, forgiving reception from people who've spent their entire lives perfecting the craft. You take pasta to Puglia specifically because you genuinely believe, or at least sincerely hope, it's actually good enough to survive the scrutiny of people who'd know immediately, without hesitation, if it wasn't up to standard. The broader pattern here says something genuinely interesting about how Lisa Hogan has positioned herself within the diddly squat story over the years, distinct from both Clarkson's bumbling enthusiast persona and Caleb's grounded, hard-won agricultural competence. She's become the one consistently willing to take the farm's raw output and push it somewhere genuinely unexpected, somewhere with real reputational risk actually attached to the outcome. Whether that's an obscure mushroom supplement line built from scratch, a candle collection based on a joke most conventional retailers would have vetoed outright before it ever reached shelves, or now, pasta carried across international borders, specifically to be judged by people with every possible reason and every relevant expertise to find it genuinely lacking. That willingness to court potential public embarrassment in pursuit of genuine, meaningful validation is, in its own particular way, entirely consistent with the show's whole broader ethos, the same underlying instinct that's led Clarkson to publicly document catastrophic harvests in real time, openly admit the farm survives financially because of television money rather than agriculture alone, and generally refuse to sanitize the genuine difficulty of what they're all actually attempting together at Diddly Squat, year after year. Lisa taking failed crop-turned-success pasta to Italy isn't a departure from that established ethos. It's a direct, natural continuation of it, just aimed, for once, at a genuinely triumphant moment rather than yet another documented disaster added to an already long list. It's also worth understanding where this particular gesture sits within Lisa's own broader trajectory on the show, because the pasta trip didn't emerge from nowhere. She's been quietly building an independent commercial identity across multiple seasons now, one that's run parallel to but distinct from Clarkson's more headline-grabbing ventures like Hawkstone Brewery and The Farmer's Dog. Her lion's mane mushroom supplements represented a genuine attempt to find commercial value in a crop the farm had struggled with elsewhere. Her candle collection, with names playful enough to generate their own dedicated fan following, turned what could have been a forgettable gift shop afterthought into something people specifically sought out. She's since gone further still, signing a deal to publish her own book, Animals and Other Egypts, chronicling a full year of life at Diddly Squat through her own distinct voice, separate entirely from Clarkson's parallel series of best-selling farm diaries, and covering exactly this kind of story: the crops, the breeding, the overalls, the offspring, and the countless small victories and setbacks that never quite make it into the show's tightly edited final cut. That pattern of independent, often unexpected ventures is precisely what makes the pasta trip to Italy feel like a natural extension of her established character on the show, rather than a one-off stunt dreamed up purely for social media engagement. Lisa has consistently demonstrated a willingness to take raw farm output nobody else had quite figured out how to monetize successfully and push it somewhere genuinely surprising. A durum wheat harvest that had failed outright in Season 3, that sat alongside failed barley and moldy mushrooms in Clarkson's own written account of the farm's darkest agricultural year. One of several consecutive seasons where the crop simply couldn't produce grain suitable for its single intended purpose, finally producing something worth turning into pasta, worth carefully packing into a bag, worth flying across an entire continent, specifically to prove a point to people who'd know better than almost anyone else alive whether that point actually held up under genuine scrutiny. That's the real story underneath the funny Instagram clip everyone shared and laughed about. Not simply Lisa took pasta to Italy as a lighthearted travel bit designed purely for comedic value, but years of a specific, stubborn crop failure finally, genuinely breaking in the farm's favor after season of disappointment, met with exactly the kind of bold, slightly reckless response that's defined the entire Diddly Squat project since the very beginning of the show. If you're going to finally succeed at something this genuinely difficult, after years of trying and failing and trying again, you might as well find out immediately, in the most public and pointed way possible, whether it actually holds up against the very best the world has to offer in that exact craft. And based on everything documented from that Puglia kitchen, everything suggests it did.